if you have a friendship, you can't just assume you know everything about that person. And then you can't just start making up stuff and then just saying that's who they are. You've had that happen to you before. I've had people say to me, I know what you're thinking. I go, what am I thinking? They'll tell me, I'm like, I'm not thinking that. I've never thought that. We had I told you I was a speaker at our student ministries retreat this year, just a few weeks ago. And we started out the retreat and I said, is there anyone in the room has no clue who I am? You don't know my name. You've never met me before. You don't know anything about me. And one girl in the back raises her hand real tall. I said, really? You don't know my name? No. You don't know anything about me? No. Okay, come on up here. So I brought her up here and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you all about you. And so I stood there and I didn't know her name. I didn't know anything about her either, but I just decided, what's the coolest girl's name in 2022? And I said, that's her name. And then what's the coolest sport the girl plays right now? And I said, that sport. And then I told her what her parents' names were. And then I just told her all sorts of stuff about herself. And she was laughing and everyone else was laughing because none of it was true. And so when I was done, I said, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to do the same thing to me. Well, everyone was like thrilled. They wanted to hear what she said about me. And so she started out and she said, your name's Daryl. And you own your own business. And everyone's roaring because she doesn't have a clue that I'm Lee. She doesn't understand that I'm Pastor Lee. She doesn't understand that I'm a pastor. And so she told me all sorts of stuff about me. And by the time we were done, everyone's laughing. I thanked her and she sat back down. Here's the thing that's fascinating about that. They made fun of me the rest of the weekend. Everyone called me Pastor Daryl or something like that for the rest of the weekend. I forget, I think it was Daryl, maybe it was Rodney, I don't know. But they called me that for the rest of the weekend and we laughed about it. But imagine if someone just at the beginning of the weekend had randomly just started calling me Pastor Daryl and called me that all weekend long. It'd be like, why do you call me that? It just doesn't make sense. I thought that was funny. Well, I don't think it's funny, as I'm not that. I'm Lee, and I'm Pastor Lee. I mean, it's who I am. You wouldn't just call me something else, and you wouldn't attribute things to me that weren't true, because if you get that wrong, all sorts of other things go wrong. It's important that I'm a married guy, right? You know that I'm married, and that's my wife sitting down there. That changes a whole lot of things. Knowing who I am matters, and getting it right matters. By the way, knowing who God is matters, and getting who He is right matters. If you get who He is wrong, it's not the same God. So, well, I'm just calling Him by a different name. Well, did that work for me? Well, I'm just attributing to Him some characteristics that I think are true about Him. Did that work for me? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work for you. I just attribute stuff to you. We call that projection, and it irritates us when people project their issues on us. Well, how are we going to find out who the true God is? We're going to have to learn about Him. We have to know who He actually is. We have this little thing here on staff that I always push it back on. They call it the Lee card. If you want something done, you say, Pastor Lee wants this done. But there's been some times that wasn't true. They wanted something done, and they just pulled the Lee card. So a little later on, I come, why are we doing this? Well, they said you wanted it. I'm like, oh my goodness. You know what I'm talking about. Anyone have that happen in your business? It's a church thing, sorry. Man, it doesn't go over very well. But we do it to God. God told me I'm supposed to marry her. Really? What did He say? I get it after services oftentimes. God really laid it on my heart during the services. You're Now tell me something. I'm like, that's the furthest thing from the truth. I don't even know where you're coming up with that. That can't even be true. God couldn't have said that. Even the facts weren't right in that thing. How did God say that to you? And God gets blamed on a lot of things. He told me to buy this, told me to go here, told me to move there, told me to tell you this. He says, you're going to worship me in spirit and in truth. God is not honored when we say stuff that he did not say. He says he's looking for worshipers, such people that worship him in spirit and truth. People that are, their hearts are pouring out for him. They are seeking him in spirit. People who are looking at his book and reading it and knowing it. You see, it's only worship if it pleases God. There's so much of what we bring before God in our time that it's not worship. It's not what God said. It's not how he asked us. And so without knowledge, we can't know God. It was fun at that retreat. By the end of that week, I kept on bringing that girl back up at like almost every session, asking her to be involved in something. Like, we became old friends by the end of the week. And I started learning stuff about her. She started learning stuff about me. But without knowing God, it's just like it was in that first moment. Anyone here know nothing about me? Come up here and tell me. And we speak in ignorance. And there's a lot of that going on in our world. We have created a God in our own image. And we have created him to do what we want and to behave the way we want. And when we hear songs or we read writings that are pleasing to us, it's the tickling of ears in Timothy, and it is not true worshipers. These are not the worshipers such as God seeks. He's seeking those who are focused in on his truth. What we study the most reveals what we love the most. And someone's raising their hand going, I'm in school right now, and there is no truth to that. I don't love this stuff at all. Okay, let me reshape this. You've graduated from school, and you're now taking a deep dive on this personal thing that you want to go down a rabbit hole on. Now are you understanding me? And you just can't read enough about it. You have a hobby, you have a sport, and you are just diving into those stats constantly. For those who love Jesus, we want to know more about him. We want to know his heart. We want to know what he is telling us and teaching us, and we find it here. Remember I said, theology leads to doxology. What we know about God leads to our praises. That's not real original with me. A friend that's a worship leader said that to me. I'm like, oh, that's good. I'm writing it down. I'm using it all the time now. But I found out that actually J.I. Packer said it way more eloquently. He was a theologian, passed away a while ago. And he said it this way. He says, theology is for doxology and devotion. That is the praise of God and the practice of godliness.